Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We have a terrific guest today. We're going to spend some time with my friend Steve Barney, who they have referred to him as the modern day Mad Potter of Mississippi. And he's been on the show a couple of times before, but we're going to be chatting with him. It's been almost 3 years actually since Steve and I spent some time together. So I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to share something with you. I had the opportunity this past weekend to visit with some high school friends, people that I graduated with, and my friend Terry Waldrop and Farrell Allman from SF Allman and Riley Morse and others have been really, determined to keep the core group of our class together and visiting with each other from time to time. And it's just terrific to be able to get together with them. And I was thankful my friend Terry hosted us over at his house. Small group of us. We had a chance to kind of sit down together and visit. And I just can't tell you how inspiring it was. But there was an interesting time during the conversation where we started talking about Pass Road and Gulfport. Now, how do we go about talking about how thankful we are to be together, to talking about Pass Road and Gulfport? And as it turns out, some of the folks in the group had family members come to town recently who'd been away for a while, and they drive down Pass Road in the heart of Gulfport, and they wonder what happened. When did we drop the guard? When did we stop caring so much about the aesthetics of the community? And it's interesting. I mentioned to the group that during the Mississippi Renewal Forum after Hurricane Katrina, when we had 100 architects and planners from around the world, including the Prince of Wales Foundation here, to work with us to kind of reimagine the cities along the coast of Mississippi, to help think about, if we were to raise the bar, what might that look like? It was an amazing experience. But the architects talked about, because as you know, after Hurricane Katrina, you could still drive down Pass Road. Thank God you could, because obviously Highway 90 was not navigable, and they observed what they believed was years of not paying close attention, years of not having the kind of codes in place, the kind of zoning in place that would over time get us to a place that was more aspirational and more pleasant. And they suggested, we had a lot of discussions about creating a new east-west corridor, and a lot of deep discussions were had. And also the notion of maybe passing some new codes, some new zoning requirements that over the next many years would allow us, as land turned over and as new things emerged, that we'd rebuild them with a new expectation. And we didn't do it, unfortunately. So here we are 20 years later. And not only do we still have what was then, but it's actually in disrepair in some cases, more so than back then. And I wish we could focus on this. As a new mayor comes into the city of Gulfport and our city council gets focused, I would encourage them to take a ride down Pass Road in Gulfport and see for themselves. Think about if they were driving from the outside, what would an outsider's view be of what they're looking at? We've just got to do a better job of that. I'm going to spend more time talking about it. There are pass roads in Gulfport in every community, and every community could think about this and focus on this because it's important. It helps, I think, it raise the psyche of your citizens when you care desperately about how we look to ourselves and how we look to others. Anyway, just a thought I wanted to share with you that came from my dinner with my friends. Okay, now let's move over to my friend Steve Barney, the modern day Mad Potter. He's the executive director of an important organization in Bay St. Louis called the Bay St. Louis Creative Arts Center. It's a multidisciplinary community, maker space, and we'll explain to you more about what that is. I look forward to being joined by Steve now. Steve, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Ricky. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, listen, we may have mentioned before that you have as it's stated in this piece that I saw about you from 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, that you masquerade as the Mad Potter at events across the region, but you have to be compared with George Orr in any way what an amazing compliment that is of your pottery skills.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm very humbled by it. Mississippi has a rich tradition of legendary potters, and to think that my work and what I'm doing in the community is thought about in any light like that is a tremendous compliment for sure.
So we'll actually circle back to that. I mean, you've found inspiration at the Orr Museum. You actually did find inspiration in looking into George Orr's life. And for people who don't know who George Orr is, it's a great opportunity for us to remind you of this showman who was a prolific potter. And the story is a really fascinating story. And of course, then Peter Anderson. People think about the Peter Anderson pottery over in Ocean Springs, and there are many others. I think we have a thriving arts community in coastal Mississippi. But let's take a step back for a second. Let's remind our listeners again. It's been a while since we spent time together. What brought you here, and what hooked you here?
Well, I went to college in Boston, and all of our friends used to come down to Jazz Fest in New Orleans every year. And, we'd come for both weekends. We found a cheap apartment to stay at. And so between the first weekend and second weekend of Jazz Fest, we'd go in the rental car kind of everywhere within 2 hours of New Orleans, down the bayou, up the river, and then boom, I found Bay St. Louis, or Bay St. Louis found me. And, it was just something unique about the kind of arts colony and the vibe here. And I knew I had to be here.
And when was that?
Well, that's going back to right just after Katrina. 18 years now. Yeah.
Steve, what's amazing to me is that period of time was a period of tremendous reflection for Bay St. Louis, as they were, just fighting the gravity to rebuild, having been devastated by the storm. And even, what I would say is you probably were hooked by what you saw reemerging, but at the same time, there was a spirit in our people that you probably saw that was undeniable. And there's something, you connected with that, didn't you?
Yeah, there was a small cadre of resilient artists. I had been to the Bay before Katrina and kind of saw the devastation happening and saw kind of everything was ripped up, but I saw the potential for what it could be, and the creative spirit, and just the connection to this small group of artists that were just determined to rebuild.
It's amazing. I mean, you think about it. I mean, I remember the brainstorming sessions related to Bay St. Louis during those days, mm-hmm. as of course the all along Beach Boulevard was obviously destroyed, but as you go inland to like Old Town, Bay St. Louis, that became kind of the epicenter for a period of time, and then as rebuilding occurred, it didn't shift back to Beach Boulevard, but it just increased the areas of influence. And look at where you are today, Steve. Look at that community today, what it's done to not just rebuild its sense of place, which I think they did a marvelous job of doing that, but to enhance it in very, very powerful ways. It's pretty inspiring recovery effort, isn't it?
It really is. I was a little skeptical when the harbor went in, quite frankly, but what Bay St. Louis has reemerged, and the vibe, I mean, it's just the buzz keeps growing, the people keep coming, and now my studio is over in the Depot district, and things are just thriving there as well. It's a fantastic place.
It really is. So you didn't see the vision of the harbor, or you weren't sure about it?
I was skeptical whether the boats would come, frankly, and I was afraid that the taxpayers might have to fund all the slips. I thought it was a great idea, but I wasn't sure that the market was there for it. And boy, was I wrong about that, thankfully.
Well, the architects and planners who were engaged in the sort of reimagining Bay St. Louis in the days after Katrina believe strongly that if you build it, they will come. And it is amazing how it has enhanced the overall dynamic of the city, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole area, particularly, I think for me, it was when the Pearl Hotel went up. Was kind of like that was the turning point for the new Bay St. Louis, and I mean, and it is just incredible to be part of it. I'm so happy to have been played some small part with other people behind the scenes helping to build the character of this place.
I agree with you on the Pearl. Every time I come over there, I've eaten there at their restaurant more than once. The artwork that's in there, it's an inspiring place, and it really made a statement about what could be in Bay St. Louis, and look at the growth that's happened around. It's truly remarkable. We'll continue our conversation with Steve Barney, the Mad Potter, modern day Mad Potter of Mississippi, when we get back. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Thank you for joining us today as we chat with my friend Steve Barney, who is, I love the name, the modern day Mad Potter of Mississippi. And we'll explain to you, if you don't know who George Orr is, of course, you've heard of the George Orr Museum, this Frank Gehry design museum. What a beautiful fit Frank Gehry was, incidentally, to George Orr. And we'll explain a little bit more about why that's so true in just a few seconds. But we're visiting with Steve Barney. And, Steve, let's spend a little bit of time talking about the Creative Arts Center that you're involved in and how important it is to continue to do creative outreach to young people and just the work that's going on to keep the arts community together in Bay St. Louis. Kind of give us an overview of all that.
Yeah, well, so going back about 10 years, I was looking for kind of an industrial space, a high bay garage to work on my steampunk pottery contraption, and build it. I was working in my front yard with a welding machine. And I came across this abandoned industrial complex on the corner of Washington and Central, right at the railroad tracks, just up the road from the fishing pier. And this was the old Baber Iron Works. It's a rich history of this complex. And of course, Charles Baber had passed away. And so I was able to purchase this complex from the estate. It's 7,500 square feet. It's got 6 different buildings in it. And I had this vision to create kind of a multidisciplinary makerspace, kind of centered around the pottery studio, but also to have a metal working shop, a woodworking shop, and space for other artists. And, transforming this complex into this vibrant makerspace has been many years in the making. But I mean, we've really done it, and we've kind of anchored the whole area here. I've got several different artist studios in here. We've got all kinds of sculpture and painting and welding. And of course, very importantly, it was kind of the first home for the Arts Hancock County. When I was working with that organization to kind of build it from a virtual organization, previously we were meeting in the library. And so I gave them a home. And of course, now we have a permanent home there in right around the corner from me. So there's this whole Depot Arts District that's emerging. And, not only is it a place for artists to work, but it really is a center to bring kids in and expose them to pottery, expose them to STEM education. And Ricky, that aspect is really just thriving right now.
Yeah, yes, people hear about STEM a lot. We have talked about it from a bunch of different angles, but from the creative community's point of view, explain why STEM is such a terrific opportunity to connect kids to their creative core.
Well, I have an engineering background and, had a career in engineering before I kind of decided to pursue the pottery full time. Pottery used to be a hobby for me. I first started pottery when I was a young child, but I've always tried to deconstruct like what is really going on in the pottery studio, and that's really become my life's work. When you come to the pottery studio, I don't think of it as an art studio, Ricky. I think about it as a science and engineering laboratory. If we talk about pottery, there's so many aspects to it. If you talk about the material science of how clay is formed, the rich history of clay deposits all across the state of Mississippi, you talk about the engineering and technology. The pottery wheel is like a physics laboratory. There is so much going on. We use chemicals to mix our glazes. There's heat and thermodynamics. We learn about design and aesthetics. And so over many years, I've developed this curriculum and been working with the Mississippi Arts Commission and their Whole Schools initiative. And we're developing all these hands-on activities for the kids. We're doing teacher trainings, and it's really getting some traction, Ricky.
I'm not surprised to hear that, but you know what's interesting, and I remember us talking about this before, but that engineering background is really helpful to you, and not only in your quest to build the machinery that you're doing your pottery from, but building your pots, understanding STEM. You get the connection between all these things, and the reality is, if you can touch a child with the opportunity to really understand what they're creatively able to accomplish in their lives, you don't know where that's going to take them. I mean, you might be unleashing, good Lord, the next who knows what, not just artist, but president of the United States. It is that significant, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, pottery is an artisanal craft that is handed down from mentor to student. And I've been fortunate to train and been exposed to people who have kind of passed along the tradition to me. And so that, I don't have any kids of my own, but to me, it's the kids of Mississippi that I'm trying to inspire, and if we do presentation to 1,000 kids, if we can touch one of them deeply and help get them on a new trajectory, that's fantastic. When I'm working with the kids, I do not encourage them to pursue a career as a potter. That is a rough go, right? Pottery should be your hobby because you never want to have to try to pay the mortgage by selling pots. It's really a rough way to go, but there is no better way to get inspired by science and technology by learning pottery. It's just such a rich playground.
It really is. Hey, so for people who may not be familiar with your pottery, I've observed over the years a wide range that you're engaged in, all kinds of colors and designs, and you do a lot of experimentation, clearly. But what's your wheelhouse? If you're describing it to somebody, what's your wheelhouse?
Well, what I would say is that I make functional pieces that you use every day. Like my wheelhouse is to make a mug, like we did at Lazy Magnolia for the first mug club in Mississippi, working with Mark and Leslie Henderson. We made thousands of these beer mugs, and everyone is different, kind of like George Orr. I would say every piece is different. And it's really the combination of the functional, the kind of ergonomics of how that mug feels in your hand with the rich glazes. I spend a lot of time, I mix with raw chemicals, use some local chemicals, and develop this whole palette of colors. So we get this aesthetic treatment. And, I would say that over the last few years, my work has really refined to the next level. It is some fine work. I would never compare my work to any of the great potters, but people like it. One of the innovations that I've been doing for a number of years now, probably before most people, is integrating 3D printing right over my the back of my shoulder is my latest 3D printer. It's my third one. And all the time I make these little emblems, like this is the 100 Men Hall, and so we can make some cultural artifacts that are identified with an event or an organization. So I think those are some of the things, Ricky, that make my pottery unique.
Steve, I don't know what it is, but there's something about a beautiful pot for me. I'm just going to describe how I view it. A beautiful pot, once you put that glaze on, that shininess that it creates, a blue that really stands out to me, I guess probably the best way to describe it is more like a cobalt blue, because I think about when you find blue water offshore, there's just a special, deep, gorgeous blue to it. And then you put that glaze on top of it. That blue appeals to me. I don't know. It may be red or it might be yellow with somebody else, but for me, it connects. That particular color connects to me. And if I had to name another one, it's a green. It's almost a fluorescent green, but it's certainly not lime green, but it's a beautiful, bright green with the glaze on it. Something about that just appeals to me. When you're experimenting, you mentioned this about the palette of colors that you have, through experimentation over the years, kind of landed on some that really appeal to you and appeal to people who work with you. What colors do you find people are really drawn to?
Well, we're kind of in a beach community. So sometimes, people are looking for things that kind of work with the palette of the beach. So like, for instance, it's a lot of times it's the combination of the colors, like an oatmeal brown, which is kind of reminiscent of the sand, combined with the greens and the blues are particularly powerful. And people like them. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do this. We'll pick it up from right there, and we'll continue to talk about your style, and then we'll shift gears and chat a bit about George Orr and what made him so unique. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Steve Barney. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We're visiting with potter Steve Barney. Now, look, he's way more than a potter. What I would call, how I would refer to Steve, is a leader in the creative arts community, and his focus is enabling other artists to be able to thrive. He obviously, through his pottery, through all his experimentation and his work, he's refined that, and he's becoming pretty well known in that regard. But also, love for the Bay St. Louis art community, in particular, and willing to give back in significant ways. And then, of course, there's the whole discussion about STEM and how the art community in Bay St. Louis and really all along the coast is a great extension of STEM learning opportunities for young people. But when we went to break, we were talking about unique colors. So you've got this palette, and you've described, sand as a draw, and blue and greens, and so much possibility there. What's your favorite when you are doing something and you get the glaze on it and you're looking at it and it appeals to you more than anything else? What is it?
Well, this particular palette that we've worked with this brown and the spearmint green kind of overflowing, and the richness of when those glazes combine together, it's magical. That's kind of my latest favorite.
Hey, do you happen to have one near you that you can grab?
Oh,
he's looking on his desk. Yeah, we'll describe it to the radio audience, but just hold one up. Yeah.
Yeah. So this mug right here is a mug that we did. This actually is blue. And it's got kind of white on the top. This white that's in here is actually titanium dioxide, which was manufactured at the Comores DeLille plant. So this was a series of 500 mugs that we did for the 45th anniversary of their plant last year. And so one of the things that's neat, Ricky, is that for each client or each customer, we can develop a unique blend of colors that are significant for them. I really like the way this glaze came out. But one thing that's interesting is that sometimes glazes that appeal to me aren't really what sells. So I kind of put all kind of stuff out there, and then when people like it, I'm like, okay, we'll make more of those. One thing I will tell you though is that in general, my color combinations are pretty bold. For some reason, people look at them and they say, well, someone masculine made this pottery.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a style. It's a style.
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, we'll shift gears and chat about George Orr for just a second. But when I think about George Orr, you think about Walter Anderson, for example. Walter Anderson, this prolific artist, who was really a Renaissance man. I enjoy my conversations on this show about about Walter Anderson's life. And, now that he's got this, this wonderful documentary that's been shown all over the United States, and a book that Robert St. John helped co-produce, you think about that, the world's, getting to know Walter Anderson. But he, when he was living, there was some appreciation for him, but most of the appreciation came long after his death. I think about Robert Johnson, the famed blues artist. And, he died at 27. He only recorded 29 songs. And he didn't get discovered till many, many, many years later, when people like Eric Clapton and others, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, they were all so involved in understanding how is it he did what he did with his fingers on that guitar. It's truly amazing. You can understand why Robert Johnson is often referred to as the father of blues. But you think about George Orr in the same way, actually. George, he was prolific. I remember the story, and you can zero in more specifically, that he had made 10,000 pots, and then there was the big fire, and so many were destroyed, and then he made another 10,000 pots or something similar to that. But he was incredibly prolific. And think of Barnum and Bailey with his curled, mustache, handlebar mustache, and the way he was able to promote himself is truly remarkable. But it wasn't until a book was produced and the New York scenes kind of got turned on to him that George Orr really became a thing. It's so interesting. And look, my hope for you, Steve, is that you get known while you're alive so you can enjoy that, But it is a fascinating story about George Orr, isn't it?
Yeah, you know what? George Orr had a lot of catchphrases, one of which was, buy a Biloxi souvenir before the potter dies or gets a reputation, right? And so with a little bit of, stealing from him a little bit, we like to think about that as well. And I will tell you, people are starting to get interest in my pottery. There's a growing number of people who are collecting my work, who have a whole cabinet full of them, and so yeah, hopefully I will be noticed before my death.
So one of the interesting things about George Orr was, man, if you have a George Orr pot, you should hold on to it. It's worth something
For sure.
And, the number of pots that were destroyed during Hurricane Katrina, it's really sad to think about that. But what was interesting about him is that he would take this incredibly thin, and you can describe it better than I can. I'll spin it over to you in just a second, Steve. But he would make this pot, and then he would bend it or twist it in certain ways. And he could do it in a way that the clay didn't rip or tear, which fascinated folks, actually. And as we got a little further in time, through family members and other, we learned that on the banks of the Schuylkill Bluff River in Biloxi is where he found this sweet spot of clay that he enjoyed using, that gave him the ability to make it super thin and to be able to twist it the way he did. That you can describe that. And it's also sort of magical, really, the way that Frank Gehry came to be the guy to build the museum, because he also tended to take his designs and twist them appropriately in weird ways, and has been world renowned as a result of it. But what a story that is, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, it's incredible. The rich clay deposits in the Schuylkill Bluff River and other areas along the Gulf Coast are are spectacular for making pottery. But really, Ricky, it was much more than the clay. George Orr was an innovator in his techniques. He built his own pottery wheel, but he was really a master of throwing these forms that were paper thin, thinner than you could possibly imagine, and then being able to fold them and distort them in such a way that they kept their integrity. And these were techniques that are still trying to be copied to this day.
Have you tried it?
Yeah, I have. I sometimes I use a little a heat gun or a hair dryer to dry different parts of the pot and keep some moist, and to twist them. And certainly during my performances, we work with hanging these pots upside down and doing these distorted forms. But I don't have any type of technical skill that George Orr ever had. I mean, his artistry and his mastery is, I mean, he was really, kind of the whole arts and crafts movement. I mean, it was beyond pottery. His aesthetics and the ornate details and the distortion, the thin walls, and the different things that he did. There's fascinating puzzle mugs where you'd have to put your finger over different holes, otherwise it would drip all over you. Just amazing work.
And he was so prolific. My goodness, man. He had to have been spinning multiple times a day.
Well, I think that he lived in that pottery studio. We see photographs of his studio. There's pots hanging from the ceiling. They're all over the walls. They're all over the floor. Kind of like my studio is becoming. I mean, it's. I wouldn't say multiple times a day. I think that's all that he did, really, for many, many years was in the studio or on exhibition. This was his life for sure.
It's so interesting. One of the things that I came to appreciate as I got older is, when you see a pot that's been spun, amazingly, it may have some design on the outside. It may, be in a special color, as we discussed earlier with that glaze. There's something about it. You don't want to use it because it's so amazing. It becomes kind of art that you want to put on the shelf and be able to admire. I'm sure that's everywhere, but we have seem to have a special claim to it here in coastal Mississippi, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the Andersons and the history of shearwater pottery. You talk about George Orr. You talk about the work that Brian Nettles is doing, and you talk about the Pup McCarty and what McCarty pottery is doing up in Marigold. Hundreds and hundreds of potters across the state, but really a strong concentration right here on the coast. And I am so happy to be part of that heritage.
We'll pick it up from right there with Steve Barney when you get back on the other side. You didn't realize you could have a whole conversation about spinning pots and it be so dynamic and interesting, did you? I know that's what you're thinking. Fun show today. I know. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We're visiting now with Steve Barney, who is the executive director for the Bay St. Louis Creative Arts Center. He's a potter. He's been known as the Mad Potter of Mississippi. But he's been building machines. You mentioned I think in that first segment that he's a farmer engineer. He's been playing with clay since he was a child. And there's so much here to think about. But you mentioned about George Orr building his potter's wheel. You did the same, didn't you?
Yeah, well, so, about 10 years ago, maybe longer now, 12 years ago, when I was learning about George Orr and reading all these books, reading these biographies, watching these videos, he really got into my subconscious. And George Orr came to me in a dream, and he told me to carry on his vaudeville tradition of pottery as performance art. And in this dream, Ricky, I visualized this crazy contraption that was made from an antique drill press connected with a bunch of belts and pulleys and mannequin arms and flamethrowers. And part of this dream was the ability to hang upside down. So I took the winch from the boat trailer and the harness from the rock gym, and kind of over a several year period built this contraption that was in my dream, and that kind of allowed me to hang upside down and do my whole performance, and kind of the rest is history.
Isn't that interesting? Don't you love how creative minds work? And some people, they don't understand it. And what you are teaching through STEM and through your own example is to lean into it, man. As crazy as it may seem, lean into it and see where it takes you. That's so cool to hear. But that's what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes we have some crazy, wild dreams, but this one was special. And I said, I'm not letting this one go. And this became a whole new trajectory for me. And, at first when I started doing all this crazy performance, I wasn't really sure why. I knew I wanted to attract attention, and like George Orr coming to the coast, I wanted to separate what I was doing from all the other potters. But then over time, using this as a way to inspire kids and then to kind of develop this full-blown STEM curriculum has really given it some legs.
Yeah, that is so cool. Yeah, I mean, it's you got to find your thing. Hey, look up banana ball. Look up banana ball. If you don't know what it is, this guy had this crazy idea to make playing baseball interesting. And they're packing stadiums. I'm talking about the Major League Baseball stadiums with this crazy baseball that they do, where they dance and do crazy stuff and make it enjoyable. One of the guy who started it said, baseball is boring, and he played baseball and coached baseball. And this is his way of saying, let's make baseball a little bit more like, and this is my words, this is not the word he used, like professional wrestling, where there's something going on all the time that keeps people interested. See, that is an example. In fact, I may try to figure out a way to bring that guy onto my show at some point, because here's a guy who had the thought that people are the average person is bored by baseball. There's too much downtime. Okay. And what he did is he watched crowds and watched them when they were excited. And what were they excited about? What were they, when you saw crowd engagement, what is it that they were engaged about? And he built an entire league around what he learned. But my point is not about banana ball, but my point is really about just pursuing these odd dreams, and these are the things. This is the innovation that transforms art efforts in towns and communities and businesses and states, and the sky is really the limit. But it's so true, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, it really is. And I've seen the videos of the Savannah bananas, and, really, we're really trying to do that with pottery. Instead of thinking about it as a lone person sitting alone in their studio, we make it an interactive experience, audience engagement, get kids to put down their phones, really get them turned on to something different. Ricky, I really did get to be quite known for that, the performance art and the hanging upside down. But, honestly, I have not done the performance. I do a lot of engagements, working at different museums and schools, but I haven't done the hanging upside down and the head-shaped bowls performance since COVID. And, a lot of people in Bay St. Louis have come here since COVID. So now I find that people all the time, on a daily basis, they say, Steve, we heard about you hanging upside down, but we haven't seen it. Well, so I will tell you, Ricky, we're going to bring it back. So this fall, we're going to be doing the whole thing. We're going to get that rusty machine out. We're going to be hanging upside down, and we're going to be making quite a scene here in the Bay.
Well, that's awesome, man. You be your own Barnum and Bailey for sure. I mean, that's the way to separate yourself. Hey, look up Steve Barney. Look up Potter Steve Barney, or the Bay St. Louis Creative Arts Center. You'll be glad you did. Follow them on Facebook. They do a great job of kind of letting you know what's going on. Steve, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend.
Hey, I really appreciate the opportunity, Ricky. It's always fun.
It's been great. Listen, have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.